Now, it's been fascinating weekends. Football, 2 FA Cup semi-finals, of course. Manchester City beat Sheffield United comfortably, resting, I have to say, a number of their very top players, but they won comfortably 3-0. And Manchester United beat Brighton in a penalty shootout in a game I think Brighton were the better team in, but it's not what I think that matters. It's what John Giles and Liam Brady, who join us, really think. Liam, just let me go back to Friday night and Southampton at the Emirates going 2 up. And in the end, Arsenal had to sort of scramble a draw. Southampton are dead and buried. They look sure to go down, even with the point they gained on Friday night. It must have been very disappointing for Arsenal, for Arteta, and indeed for you, that you couldn't get those 3 points on the board.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I was there. Shot ourselves in the foot, really, at the very outset of the game. I think I spoke to you about Ramsdale a couple of weeks ago when he played so well against Liverpool.
Yeah,
I'm still not convinced that he's a great goalkeeper.
Yeah,
he's one of those goalkeepers that always wants to get in the game. He's not happy just to have a quiet match.
Yes.
He always wants to be involved, and like the mistake he made for the first goal was absolutely ridiculous. He had a ball out to Gabriel on the left hand side. If he wanted to, play out from the back, that was the ball. But he wanted to show everybody, I can just thread it through 2 Southampton players into my midfield player.
Yeah.
A ridiculous decision,
Yeah.
And that got Arsenal off to a terrible start. And then Gabriel made a mistake. He let Walcott in behind him within another few minutes, and they're 2-0 down. And, in many respects, they did well to fight back and get themselves a draw. But you can't keep giving goals away like that, Eamon.
No. John, I don't know if you saw that game, but 2 points dropped for Arsenal at this stage, with Manchester City to come on Wednesday, is bad news. They're 5 points ahead this morning of Manchester City, who have 2 games in hand, and of course, who Arsenal have to go and play at the Etihad on Wednesday. So that was an expensive mistake.
Yeah, well, they've had a few, Eamon, in the early parts of the games. We all gave them great credit for, particularly at Villa, when they came back from goals down. And then another one when they've done 2 or 3 at least coming back, which we've given them credit for. But the point is, they shouldn't have to be coming back like that. If they're going to win the league game, and they can't afford to be giving goals away, and as Liam says, silly goals, you just can't do it. And you're chasing the game, and they're doing well to come back. Even on the weekend, they did well to come back to get a draw. But you're still dropping 2 points.
Yeah.
And at the stage now where City are coming good, they're not dropping. There's lots of, like they had, I don't know how many points they were in front there a short while ago, and they've dropped them. I think they've dropped 6 points in the last few matches. So as Liam says, especially the goalkeeper, you can't be making mistakes like that.
No. And Southampton, just to put some context on that result, the rock bottom of the Premier League table, 24 points. They appear to have no chance of getting out of it. They've no games in hand, and it's a dogfight down there anyway. But let's move on to the Cup semi-finals. John, I know you saw the Manchester City, Sheffield United assassination. They were ruthless. They were able to rest a number of their top players. The Sos bench had Diaz, Stones, Rodri, De Bruyne and Ederson sitting on it. But the depth of their squads is so formidable. They still were comfortable against a decent championship team, Sheffield United. They're in contention to go up.
Yeah, they made a very, very professional job of it, City. Sheffield United did their best. But the City were very patient. Early on they hadn't scored for a while, kept their patience, and then Mahrez came in, as we know, scored a hat-trick in the end. But very, very professional performance, Eamon, and that was coming off the Bayern Munich match as well.
Yeah.
Where they were very good as well. So there were 2 different matches, obviously 2 different games, but they really, really did their stuff in a very, very professional way. And They just didn't give Sheffield United a chance.
No.
For a shock match.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shock results, you know.
Yeah. Liam, did you see that match?
I just saw the highlights, Simon. It was a stroll in the park once they took the lead, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
And it just shows you the strength they have and depth. Mahrez doesn't play, every week, and he puts him in and he scores a hat trick. A very good hat trick it was as well.
Yeah, and that's one of their real strengths, Liam, isn't it? There's so many players they have who can actually be on the bench for a while. Mahrez is a good example. De Bruyne, Grealish, Bernardo Silva. Bernardo Silva, who's on the bench more than I'd have him on the bench, comes on, he gets a couple of goals. And Gundogan, who is the team captain but doesn't always play, is another one. Goals is what they have. And now, apparently, a real defence, which is something Guardiola's teams have never really had.
Yeah, Kanji's been a good signing.
Yeah. Aki, the left back.
He wasn't playing at the weekend either. He'd probably start against Arsenal. So, they have brilliant squad of players, haven't they? They've got strength and depth in every position. Yeah. And to go back to Arsenal just for a second, Eamon, get a couple of injuries, and the players that have come in, like Holding for Saliba, not being really good enough. Vieira played the other night because Xhaka was out. He looked very, very ordinary. Whereas City, complete contrast. They have two really strong players for every position. They've got 22, 23 really world-class players. Yeah. And that's probably going to win them the league in the end.
Yeah, it'll win them everything, I'm beginning to think. John, just a point about City and the depth they have in their squad, and the fact that, for a cup semi-final, against the championship side, but they can leave out so many frontline players and not worry about it. It gives them great comfort, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Well, if you're going to do, or if they're going to do what they're trying to do, which is to win the treble, you have to have that squad.
Yep.
You just do. Like Arsenal are up there. Arsenal don't have a squad that big to rest that many players. Neither do any of the other teams. It's coming near the end of the season, and they've done it before where they really march on. So it could well be that this season as well.
Let me just ask both of you a question about Pep Guardiola that only dawned on me recently because I haven't been a big fan of his. You've told me a long time ago when Nathan Ake played for Bournemouth.
Yeah.
I think he went there on loan from Chelsea and eventually, or from somewhere. But you said to me, this guy's a top class player. And I kind of noted that. Next thing, Pep goes and buys him, takes him to City, doesn't play him very often in the first year, 18 months. Now he's in the team more or less every week at left back, and he's a hell of a player.
He's a good player. He's a very versatile player. Left back. Centre back is his real position.
Yeah.
And I think when you're in the position that Pep is in, he's got a lot of good players anyway.
Yeah.
So he can take his time, and he has the money to do it.
Yeah.
He can have a good look and get the players he really wants. And I think also, he's in charge of the situation.
Yes.
It's not like Chelsea where we had Potter and this business guy was buying players left, right and centre.
Ted Booley, a name that will go down in history for wasting 600 million.
Did you see last week? He went into the dressing room.
I did. He gave them a bollock and he said he was embarrassed.
I gave him a telling off.
Yeah.
Without Frank Lampard's permission.
Yeah.
So it's a mess, Eamon.
Yeah.
Now, Pep doesn't have to put up with any of that nonsense.
Yeah.
No nonsense whatsoever. I think he's in a very lucky position that he's in charge of what players he wants in and what players he wants out. And I think there's a lot of managers in England don't have that power, especially Chelsea.
Yeah. Let's move on, Liam, to the other Cup semi-final because it was significant. Manchester United were terrible in Seville against a very poor Sevilla side who they'd led 2-0 at Old Trafford, let Seville back in the game with 2 late on goals, and Seville killed them and they are not a good team. United, I thought, against Brighton, were outplayed for long periods of the game. The confidence, the technical ability of Brighton was most impressive, Liam.
Yeah, they're a very good side. We've been on about them for the last couple of months, Eamon. You know, they're up to, in the positions to get qualified for Europe. They've still got an outside chance of getting in the top four if they were to put a winning run together. You know, they have a few games in hand.
They've got 3 games in hand of some of those teams in front of them,
They've got a midfield that probably Man United would envy. You know, they've got this lad Casado that Arsenal tried to buy in the winter window, but they couldn't get him. I think they offered up to 75 million for him, and they couldn't get him. He's a very good player alongside the Argentinian McAllister, who's a fabulous player as well. And these players have been recruited, for very little money compared to some of the prices. We just mentioned Chelsea there, how much money they've spent. The lad up front, Mitoma, Japanese player, he's very, very good. And they were missing Ferguson yesterday, which I thought was a big miss. I think he's probably first choice now in front of Danny Welbeck, but Ferguson was injured and Danny Welbeck had to play yesterday. So I thought Brighton were the better team. They had more chances. David De Gea, I think, had one of his very good games. He made a lot of good saves. And Manchester United, I thought themselves, they stumbled over the line. I have to say, the penalties, apart from the one that March took, were very, very good, weren't they? They were all really good penalties. The goalkeeper had no chance. So United are there, and look, on the outside, you look at it and you say, well, they're having a very good season. They've won the League Cup. They look like they're going to qualify for the Champions League by finishing in the top 4, and they're now in the FA Cup final. But if you look at the squad of players and compare them to Man City, I think they're still miles behind that kind of standard. Yeah,
John, you pointed out to me earlier this morning when we were talking about that match that the keepers didn't make one save. The quality of the penalties was superb until poor old Solly Marsh, I think it was, ballooned one over the bar, and I felt desperately sorry for him. But the quality of the penalties now is amazing.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, the goalkeepers had no chance in them.
No.
You know, none of the goals saved the penalty. So the goalkeepers couldn't be, even De Gea couldn't be the hero.
No.
I mean,
no.
Because the last lad, Solly Marsh, as you said, he whacked it, 20 yards over the bar. So he didn't even have to make a save, or he didn't make a save. De Gea having a nightmare in Seville. Him and the centre half nightmares. I mean, and because Ten Hag said afterwards, we showed our character. 4 or 5 days before that, they didn't show much character.
No, they didn't.
But I thought for long spells in the game, I thought Brighton were the better team.
Yep.
And they had one great chance in the first half.
Yes.
That probably could have decided, but they didn't finish it off. So, United came back into it then.
Yeah.
But I thought there was an awful lot, I mean, I just come into the game, and I'm just going off the way a bit, that lads going down injured, Eamon.
Oh, it's desperate.
I mean, it was unbelievable.
I mean, Fernandes was a disgrace.
Fernandes at the best of it. I mean, he must have gone down about 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
Holding his face one time. And he wasn't the only one. They were going down and rolling around, and you think, it's just gone. It's gone ridiculous.
Yeah.
But anyway, get back to the match. It's a big win for United, as we know. But weren't convincing in a way that you would expect them to be getting into the cup final. But they are there.
Do you think Manchester City will beat them, John?
Well, I wouldn't be back at Man U against Man City. I mean, as you know, in the cup particularly, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
They are in the final, so that's that is a start for them.
It is. Liam, I think I know what's going to happen in the final. Do you?
Well, look, there's a gulf in class between the two teams. There's no doubt about that. But on the day, like Southampton got a draw against Arsenal, you wouldn't give them a chance. I mean, so things can happen in this game of football, probably more so than any other sport. And I think that's what makes football the best game in the world.
Yes.
You just don't know.
On Wednesday, the most important match of the season will take place. Earlier, I spoke to Liam Brady about it. This segment of The Stand is sponsored by Now. On Wednesday, Manchester City play Arsenal at the Etihad. It is the game of the season, no question about it. It will almost certainly decide who wins the Premier League. And you have a great opportunity to stream this game with a Now Sports Extra membership. Don't miss the biggest match of the season. You can stream it on Now. And to discuss what we might see on Wednesday, I'm joined by an Arsenal legend, Liam Brady, both as a player and as someone who was head of youth development there for a long time when they were producing so many good young players, as they have done under Mikel Arteta. Liam, there's no question this is the biggest match of the season for Arsenal. Can you remember the last time they had a game as big as this?
Oh, you'd have to probably go back to Arsene Wenger's time in charge, Eamon, I guess, when they were constantly kind of pushing for major honours. It was a big game in Paris when they lost to Barcelona in the Champions League final. That was obviously a momentous game.
Yes.
I remember them beating Leicester City at the Emirates when Leicester City and Arsenal were going head-to-head for the Premiership. Leicester got there in the end, deservedly so. Arsenal fell away, but that was a huge game. But nothing like this, Eamon.
Yeah.
I think you have to go back to the time of Wenger and Fergie at Manchester United to replicate this kind of game.
Does that indicate that Mikel Arteta has done a good job, Liam? How long has he been there now at Arsenal?
He's been there about 2.5 years, I think, Eamon. He got the job when Emery was sacked.
Unai Emery,
And that was like probably around, if my memory serves me right, halfway through the season. And he turned things around pretty much immediately. They won the FA Cup at Wembley.
Yes.
And he got his first trophy, that had eluded plenty of other managers in other Premiership clubs. So he got off to a flying start. And then things didn't quite continue the way he wanted and the club did hope. But this season, I think with the arrival of so many good youngsters, and also the signings have been much better at the start of this season.
Yes.
The players brought in have enhanced the team that was there. Zinchenko and Jesus from Manchester City obviously have lifted the level. Saliba, the centre-back that was out on loan, he came in and has been very, very good all season, very consistent all season. They've missed him recently. He's missed the last couple of games, and I think he's been a big miss. So Arteta's turned things round brilliantly this season, and they've just gone from strength to strength. I think the start they got gave them the confidence to go against teams home and away. I think they've got one of the best away records in the league.
Yeah.
Scoring goals, everybody making contributions. Odegaard, who I had my doubts about, has been very good this year. And they've scored goals from midfield and from defenders coming up for corner kicks and free kicks. And the forward line of Saka, Martinelli and Jesus have delivered goals as well. So it really has been a fantastic season for Arsenal so far.
Yeah, and they have a really outstanding player, in my view, Kieran Tierney, who they signed from Celtic. I think he's a brilliant player, but he can't get inside at the moment. But let me look at the City team, Liam, and the feature of it, of course, is Erling Haaland's prolific goal scoring. But the other thing that strikes me when I look at their team is the number of players who are potential match winners by goal scoring. Haaland, of course. Bernardo Silva scored 2 on Saturday. Mahrez scores important goals. De Bruyne we know, score goals. Gundogan from midfield is also a big game goal scorer. And Jack Grealish has weighed in recent weeks with 2 or 3 goals, important goals, but also with really outstanding performances. He's a player who has improved for Guardiola's coaching.
Yeah, the last 2 months, City have been unstoppable, Eamon.
Yes.
They've beat everything in front of them, I think early on in the season, maybe a little bit of complacency, maybe players out of form. They slipped up a few times. And you'd put that down to maybe a lack of concentration, a little bit of complacency. But they seem to have got their act together over the last 2 months. And they started this chase on Arsenal in the league, and obviously the holy grail for Manchester City and for Guardiola at the club is the Champions League. They look in a pretty good position to have a real go at that. And the treble is on for them, Eamon. The treble is on that Alex Ferguson got all those years ago. It's definitely on for Manchester City. I'm sure the Manchester United fans have that in the back of their minds. They're fearing that with trepidation. But Arsenal, they go to City. They have a point advantage going into this game, and if they manage to come away not losing, it would be a great result for Arsenal. But they're up against a Manchester City team who are flying at the moment. And as you say, they've got goals from everywhere. And with Haaland up front, they've got a phenomenal striker.
Yes, and as you said yourself, Liam, they have their eye, of course, on the Champions League and that very elusive treble. Let me ask you about the hope you have. What do you feel when you're optimistic? What do you look at? And what do you look at when you're pessimistic in terms of this, which is undoubtedly the match of the season?
Well, I think you've mentioned, though, the talent that's available to Man City. Even when Haaland is being out, hasn't stopped them in recent months. They have goals everywhere. As you said, Jack Grealish is having a great season in the last 3 months, turned things round. I think there was a question mark on whether he was worth all that money, whether he brought really what Guardiola expected him to bring to the team, but he's delivering now. He's been skinning fullbacks week in, week out, making goals, scoring a few as well. So he's a big player. De Bruyne on his day is probably the most creative player that's around in the Premier League. Some of the assists he's given Haaland on crosses and things like that have been sublime. Defensively, looking good, top goalkeeper. It's quite a frightening prospect when you go through it. But football is football, Eamon, and Arsenal have showed that they can play with confidence and they can give teams difficulty. Against Manchester City, actually, at the Emirates, I was at the match, and in the first half, Arsenal were the better side, but they didn't take their chances, and City turned it round in the second half. Now, you've got to be prepared. If you're going to beat Manchester City on the night, you've got to do absolutely everything perfectly, They've got to be watching all those dangerous players we talked about. They mustn't lose their concentration. They mustn't do anything silly. And they have the players like Saka, like Jesus, like Martinelli to hit Manchester City and maybe get a goal or, it's a one-off. It's a game of football, Eamon, against the two best teams in the Premiership this season. And, I'm, as an Arsenal man, obviously hoping that they can get something from the match.
Okay, it's obviously going to be a great night. It is the game of the season, and you can stream this game live with a Now Sports Extra membership. Wednesday night, 8 o'clock kickoff, and let's hope for Liam's sake, at least, that Arsenal get a result. But for sure, it is going to decide the Premier League this season, and it certainly won't be a dull game. Now, Liam, the most extraordinary match was Newcastle and Spurs. The game was played at Newcastle. We know that Spurs don't like the north of England very much. They were 5-0 down after 21 minutes and they lost 6-1. Eddie Howe's a real good coach at Newcastle and he hasn't spent fortunes on players. Tottenham, 1 goal. Again, Harry Kane scored it. He'll have to leave that club. It is a real mess now, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's good. It's become a bit of a laughing stock, Eamon.
Yes.
That was a real big match yesterday. It was the Champions League was on it, wasn't it? Finishing 4th position, and Newcastle absolutely annihilated them, and Spurs just capitulated. The mistakes they were making at the back, the space that the Newcastle attack had, Isak and Linton. There was hardly any pressure on them when they were putting the ball away, So I think Spurs players have kind of jacked it in. You know what I mean? Since all the trouble with the manager and so forth, they've kind of jacked it in for the last couple of months. And Most of the Tottenham fans had left by half-time yesterday, and you couldn't blame them, could you?
No, you couldn't, and Newcastle's a long way to travel to. John, that match really, it was a humiliation for Spurs, and it's hard to look at a player like Harry Kane and Son as well, the two of them, and how hard they work week in, week out. Kane scored a goal again yesterday, but he really does need to get out of that club because it's a dump.
The manager left, Eamon.
Yeah. And they gave the job to his assistant.
They gave the job to his assistant. That's no chance of working.
No.
You have to go back to Daniel Levy.
He's
made a mess of it. He's made a mess of it for years, getting managers in, sacking managers, doing all the things that he's done. He's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, and the fans know that. I mean, Spurs are a big club, as we know, one of the major clubs in the world.
Yes.
And you have all this nonsense going on. They've been without a manager for the last, 6, 7, 8 matches?
Yeah.
And I mean, if you were playing, if the Spurs team were playing well and winning matches with Conte gone, Eamon.
Yeah.
There'd be no need for a manager.
No.
Anywhere. It's just that's why you have managers. That's why you have great managers doing their jobs.
Yeah.
Right. And they haven't got a manager. Don't know who they want. He's going to make some decision along the way. And he's been doing it for years, Eamon.
Yeah.
Spurs have been a laughing stock for years in relation to what they're capable of doing.
Yeah. Well,
it's ridiculous.
There is a phrase, I'm not sure if Roy Keane invented it, but somebody invented, you might know, named Spursy. It's meant to convey the idea that someone is unreliable, soft
centre, yeah.
Soft centre.
It's become. I don't know who coined it, but it is out there, Eamon, and there is an element of that, isn't there? I think with Conte, he very nearly turned it round, but he didn't get the backing that he needed. Daniel Levy, I suppose, they spent a lot of money on the stadium, a bit like Arsenal going back.
Yes.
When they moved from Highbury to the Emirates, your kind of transfer targets diminish a bit. You have to pay back the money you owe on building the stadium, and I think that's got in the way of the last 2 or 3 Spurs managers.
Yeah, John. Let me just ask you finally about Fulham and Leeds, the Saturday lunchtime match. I think Fulham are well coached. I think they're a good team. And Leeds almost got something, but not quite. And they're down among the dead men, but that's very hard to call. It's very tight at the bottom.
Big trouble, Eamon. A couple of weeks ago, I thought they would get out of it, but in the last 3 matches they've played, they've been dreadful.
Yeah.
Really dreadful. I mean, at home, they conceded, I think it was 11 goals and scored in 2. He's brought other players into the team now, like Cooper at the back, who is not good enough. He's under really severe pressure. From the fans, I believe him. I think he was in big trouble on Saturday. I think if they got hold of him, they'd hang him up.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't played the left winger, and he's left a couple of other players out. And as happens with the fans, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
They lost again. I thought Fulham beat them well. They got a goal. They went 2 up. They got a goal back. Leeds did, but they never looked like doing it. I mean, they're in big trouble now. Big trouble. Yeah,
they are. It's very tight down there. Southampton are the only ones you'd say have very little chance. But just like to ask both of you in a one-word answer, Manchester City or Arsenal on Wednesday, John?
Oh, it's tough to fancy City, Eamon. It won't be a war. I mean, Arsenal are a very, very good team, as we know. They've made a few mistakes. They don't have the experience that City have. Like on paper now, you'd have to fancy City. Right.
And Liam, I'm sure you don't agree with that. You'd give Arsenal a chance, would you?
Well, I'm hoping rather than, believing, to be quite honest. Yeah, I can't give you a one-word answer. I'm looking for a real great performance from Arsenal, particularly up front. I think if the front players play really, really well, they can give City problems, and that's what I'm crossing my fingers for.
Okay, John Giles and Liam Brady, thank you both very much for joining us. It's always good on a Monday morning to have your sanity restored by 2 of the best judges in the game. Thanks to John and Liam.